The Orlando Magic have to get as much Jonathan Isaac as they can. Just how much is too much? That's an impossible answer to make. Plus, cleaning up some things from Saturday's loss, why Jalen Suggs has to toe the line on defense, and it's a make or miss league part 71. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is March 25th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, Jonathan Isaac's big breakout game, why this was so long in the making, and why the Magic can't get enough Jonathan Isaac. We'll dive into some numbers and predict some playoff potential coming up here in just a moment. Plus, cleaning up some stuff from Sunday's game. We'll talk about Jalen Suggs and the line that he's always dancing around, and make or miss league part 71, because we got shot data to go through. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. I gave it short shrift on yesterday's episode of Locked On Magic because it was a weekend episode, and I wanted to make sure that we got the chance to really dive into some of these numbers and really dive in to the impact that Jonathan Isaac is having on this team. If the Magic had won that game on Saturday night, we would have been talking nonstop about Jonathan Isaac. And I was already writing my lead already, early third quarter. I was already, after the first half and what Isaac did, scoring 17 points in the half. I was already preparing to write this article. And then, you let the game play out. You can't be so married to what you're doing because the game does tell you what to write. And obviously we got into a very close game and we're going to be dealing with a lot of the lessons from that game here for the rest of the season. And as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, because again, everything's got an eye on the playoffs, but we need to go back and we need to talk about Jonathan Isaac because he had one of the most incredible and one of the best games we have seen from him and from the Magic in a long time. And yes, Jonathan Isaac tied a career high with 25 points, matching that great Pacers game back in 2019 when everyone was hurt and Isaac stepped up to the plate. Jonathan Isaac literally did something on Saturday that he has not done since before his injury. And as this season's gone on and as he's played more and more, he has looked healthier and he's looked more and more like that player before the injury, the guy that we thought was Defensive Player of the Year, the guy that we could see had so much potential, not just on defense, but on offense too. Jonathan Isaac stepped up in a huge way and continues to step up because while 25 points is certainly the high watermark for his scoring, it's that game just continued a story that's been consistent now, certainly since the All-Star break, but also for much of the season. Look, the numbers say it all. Last Saturday night, 25 points, 10 for 13 shooting, 3 for 4 from 3, 7 rebounds, 2 offensive rebounds, including a couple critical ones down the stretch, 2 steal and 2 blocks. He was a plus 26 in the game, plus 26. He entered the game with the Magic struggling. He exited the game in the second quarter with the Magic ahead. He came in after the end of that 13-0 run to start in the third quarter. By the time he left 10 minutes later, it was a game again. he had to play 10 straight minutes in the third quarter, in the third and fourth quarter, and then rested for 2 minutes and came back in to close the game. The Magic could not keep him off the floor. And that has been the case throughout the entire season, to be perfectly honest. When you look at his numbers for what they are, he's been averaging 10.2 points per game in 12 appearances since the All-Star break. So meager numbers, but making 64.7% of the shots, including 63% of his threes. Now, Isaac may not be creating a lot of these opportunities. He had a couple nice dribble moves. He had a couple nice off the dribble shots in Saturday's game, and he's playing with tremendous confidence. But he's making his 3-pointers. The ball swings to him. He shoots. He makes. He's sitting in the dunker spot and getting dump downs and making those shots because he's just so big. He's running the floor. There's a lot of confidence in him offensively that only makes his defense greater. Because if there was a statistical wrap to Jonathan Isaac, it's that, yeah, he makes your defense incredible, like otherworldly, but he's not going to give you much offensively. And his defense has far outpaced whatever he takes away offensively. So it hasn't been that big of an issue. But now it's like, okay, now he's actually really contributing on the offensive end and it's showing. Here are the numbers. For this season, the Magic have an incredible, granted, small minutes, but and off the bench, but an incredible 100.6 defensive rating with Isaac on the floor. That is the best among rotation players, and a team high plus 13.6 net rating. That means that when Jonathan Isaac is on the floor, the Magic outscore their opponents by 13.6 points per 100 possessions. That is elite. Now, granted, we have to say all the caveats. It means he's going up against a lot of bench players. He's playing very limited minutes. It does not mean it's all equated to Jonathan Isaac. But again, you see trends here because since the All-Star break, the Magic have a team best plus 20.9 net rating with a 100.5 defensive rating and a 121.4 offensive rating. These are just numbers that should confirm the eye test. The Magic are just better with Jonathan Isaac on the floor. And when we get to the playoffs, and we're getting there very, very quickly. We're obviously thinking about it a lot. When we get to the playoffs, Jonathan Isaac has to play. He's still he's still not clearing 20 minutes very often, but the Magic have to figure out the best way to maximize his minutes. They have to get the most out of Jonathan Isaac that they can. He's got to close games like he did Saturday night, like he did against the Timberwolves way back when. The Magic are trying to use him as their backup center. They'll bring him in the second quarter ahead of Mo Wagner for Wendell Carter, so he's playing with Paolo and Franz. They're trying to figure out the best way to get the most out of him because he is still really valuable. And look, Isaac was the first to say, like, he's in constant communication with the medical staff. He's in constant communication with the team saying, hey, I need a day. My body's feeling really sore. They give him that day. They're still very cautious with the injury. Even Isaac would admit he's still getting his win back. And look, he played 8 straight minutes. He played 8 minutes in the second quarter and the first half on Saturday. He committed a foul to get himself out of the game. He looks like he's dragging, and I'll admit this. At the end of the fourth quarter on Saturday, he looked very winded. It led to 2 critical fouls down the stretch. He still fought. He still played really hard. He still contributed, but he definitely tapers off after a while. There's still a physical barrier that he has to cross, but he's crossing that barrier more and more. He is doing what the Magic need more and more, and as we get to the playoffs, he has become so valuable. For anyone that's listening from another team thinking, oh, the Magic are done with Jonathan Isaac, no, he is staying. He's a critical part of this team. The Magic are going to find ways to expand his role even more next year. Honestly, he could be the team's 6th man next year, and a guy who finishes games, whether it's at the 2 or the 5, he's going to finish games. And at this point, the Magic have to find ways to use him as much as possible for the playoffs. We'll get to rotations and thinking about what the Magic have to do, but honestly, one of the ways the Magic lost the game on Saturday was they had to ride Isaac to exhaustion, and they couldn't balance their rotation to make sure he was fresh. had a fresh set of tires there for the end of the game. That's something that Jamal Mosley overall has to continue improving on. That is a major deal for Jamal Mosley. You're not going to be able to have lineups without Paolo or Franz in them. We haven't seen a playoff rotation yet. But we are seeing that the Magic are ready to expand Jonathan Isaac's role. And we can clearly see from the statistics that Jonathan Isaac is a huge factor for this team. Saturday's game was incredibly instructive. And we're going to get to two more ways that Saturday's game is a major lesson and something to dissect and think about a little bit. And we obviously have 3 days to think about it. Something to dissect and figure out a little bit more from this for the playoffs, because that's, again, what we care about. We care about the playoffs right now. If there's one conclusion we all should have, it's that Jonathan Isaac's going to play. And however many minutes he can give the Magic are probably going to need more. That's a credit to Jonathan Isaac, more than anything else, for the work he's put in and his ability to make that impact and get back to pretty close to where he was before the injury. It's exciting, to say the least. And we'll see just how the Magic ultimately do decide to use him. Okay, it's time we'll get to the next topic, next thing that we learn, and that's Jalen Suggs' defense. We'll talk about the last 2-minute reports, and we'll talk about why you just kind of have to accept that from Suggs sometimes. We'll get to Jalen Suggs towing the line on D. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit is only available to U.S. customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. You can find that on YouTube and on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Get the latest and top stories from around the sports world from local experts like me, as well as our national shows covering all the sports around the nation. You want the latest on the Shohei Ohtani scandal? Locked On Sports Today has you covered. You want the big results and big analysis from NBA games? Locked On Sports Today has you covered. You can find that again on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Just search for Locked On Sports Today. The last 2-minute report came out Sunday afternoon, and as expected, the officials the NBA deemed that it was the correct call that Jalen Suggs fouled De'Aaron Fox on that critical last play. If you watch the video, you do see Jalen stick his arm out into the torso. It's very soft, but there is a little shove. De'Aaron Fox is knocked a little bit off balance. He pulls a Triple H hard sell on it, eventually crosses over the midcourt line. And at that point, they call the whistle. There's about a 3 or 4 second delay. I get why fans are upset about it. I actually do think it was good officiating to wait to see if the Magic gained an advantage. If De'Aaron Fox doesn't cross that midcourt line, they don't call the foul and they say play on. But because he crossed the midcourt line, I think that's why they did it. Essentially, that's what they explained in the last 2-minute report. If you want to be angry about something from the officials, they said that Cole Anthony was fouled on his go-ahead layup just before that. If that's called, Cole Anthony goes to the line, makes it a 2-point game. De'Aaron Fox ties the game at the free throw line instead of gives them the lead. That's, again, I'm not losing sleep over that. The Magic had 3 great looks to win the game, gave up a 13-0 run. You got to win those games. Again, this is why I always say good teams don't win close games. They avoid them. The Magic have been winning close games this year, by the way. So you're going to have some bad luck at some point, but you leave it if you play a lot of close games, you do leave it in the hands for potential mistakes and potential wrong calls, and potential things like this. But I think now that we're kind of over the shock of the call, and again, I do think it was ultimately the right call. It's a very soft foul. It's a ticky-tack foul. If the Magic do not gain the advantage of De'Aaron Fox going over the midcourt line, it is not called. I am fully convinced of that. I read the NBA's last 2-minute report. It seemed to suggest that as well. I'm not losing sleep over it, to be perfectly honest. You got to move on. But this is an example of, in some respects, of the line that Jalen Suggs is constantly towing. Look, Jalen Suggs is a physical defender. You don't want him to change. You don't want him to be anyone other than himself. He is always going to get into De'Aaron Fox. And I think if just talking to people who are in the Kings presser or around De'Aaron Fox after the game, Fox said Jalen Suggs doesn't back down from anyone. If he backs up, he fouled. He's trying to cover his tracks. That means Jalen Suggs has a reputation, folks. That means they know what he's about. They know when they get into a game with Jalen Suggs, the war they're about to get into. And whenever you have a physical defender like Jalen Suggs, you are towing the line. You are on the brink of madness and physicality. You're always testing the limits of what the refs will do. And sometimes when you're physical, you get caught. It happened with Jalen Suggs in this game. It happened against the Jazz, and he made up for it with 2 threes. It happened against the Hawks back in January when he fouled Trae Young down the stretch on some very questionable calls. He wasn't frustrated because he was playing physical. He was frustrated that he was allowed to play physical all game, and then suddenly it wasn't. He wasn't allowed to be. Because all a player like Jalen Suggs wants is consistency. He will pick up fouls early in the game being physical just to kind of figure out where the line is and what he can do for the rest of the game. Obviously, I don't want to say he got overzealous because he didn't, but he crossed that line and it hurt the Magic on Saturday. But here's the thing. If it hurts them once, whatever, because he's going to find that line 9 out of 10 times. So Saturday was the one time that he didn't have the line. He didn't get it right. But he does so many other things so well that you have to allow Jalen Suggs to be this kind of player. Again, when you look at the numbers, and this is entering Saturday's game, the Magic have a 111 defensive rating with Suggs on the floor. That's a little bit worse than the team's overall average. Opponents shoot 40, but not by much. Opponents shoot 46.8% against Suggs, according to data from NBA.com, that against an expected 46.9%. They're not testing him. He is, teams take tough shots when Jalen Suggs goes against them. They don't try to test him. And then you get into the 3.32, then you get into 3.3 deflections per 75 possessions, 1.9 steals per 75 possessions, both in the top 15% of the league. After the All-Star break, he's gone into overdrive. Opponents are shooting 38.3% against him. Again, these are entering Saturday against an expected field goal percentage of 45.4%. Orlando has a top defensive rating in the league since the All-Star break. He's giving up, when he's on the floor, they give up 99.9 points for 100 possessions. We talked about Jonathan Isaac's crazy numbers. Jalen Suggs has crazy defensive numbers since the All-Star break too. The numbers back up that Suggs understands how to defend at a high level because he gets steals, he gets deflections, opponents don't make shots against him. But to do that, he's got to toe the line. To do that, he's got to cross the line sometimes. He's got to figure out what a foul is. He's got to not back down physically. He's got to take on humongous challenges. He wanted to guard Zion Williamson on Thursday. Great defenders, because the defense isn't about numbers. So I gave you all those numbers. None of those numbers by themselves mean that Jalen Suggs is an excellent defender. We can watch a tape and see that. See how he blows up screening action. See how he fights his way around screens and just eats people up with his body and just bothers them unendingly for 48 minutes or for however long he's on the floor. To do that, though, means you are constantly on the border of being wrong. That you're constantly potentially getting it wrong. And because defense is an inexact science, it changes every night. I'm not here to excuse Jalen Suggs fouling De'Aaron Fox. There's a big play. Suggs took maybe an unnecessary risk, but at the end of the day, that's who he is. At the end of the day, Jalen Suggs is someone who gets into you. 94 feet from the basket, 4 feet from the basket. He is in your grill. You're going to feel him. You're not going to be able to breathe. And sometimes that means he picks up a ticky-tack foul. He picks up a bad foul where he shouldn't. He's got to learn how to control that, obviously, and it came at a really bad spot on Saturday. But this is what it means to be a great defender. It means a great perimeter defender, especially in a league that doesn't favor perimeter defense. To be a physical defender like Jalen Suggs means you make an occasional mistake. And what determines whether he's successful or not is that more often than not, he doesn't make those mistakes. More often than not, he gets that right. And more often than not, it pays off for the Magic. It didn't Saturday. And that's why we're talking about it and why we're thinking about it and why it's worth mentioning. But more often than not, Jalen Suggs is the most important player on this team. The head of the snake defensively. The guy who sets the tone and the energy for this team. He doesn't back down. Nobody else backs down. He gives insane defensive effort. Everyone else ups their defensive effort. He sets the tone for everything. And frankly, I wouldn't change a thing. Even Saturday's play, the way De'Aaron Fox was torching the Magic at times, I wouldn't change a thing. That's who Jalen Suggs is, and the Magic have to let Jalen Suggs be Jalen Suggs. There's one more piece to the puzzle from Saturday's loss that deserves mention. We'll talk about it's a make or miss league once again. We'll get to some numbers on the Magic shooting coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. No crazy salary cap, no confusing scoring system, no dealing with sharks and people with multiple entries who know what they're doing and prevent you from winning. You want the best chance you can have to win because it's all about you, not about anybody else. All you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. Prize Picks is my favorite daily fantasy sports game. They offer quick withdrawals and easy gameplay with an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. They also offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like their Taco Tuesdays. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value and make it even easier for you to win. Prize Picks really is daily fantasy sports made easy. It's what I play when I'm able to play daily fantasy sports because I know it's just about me and the numbers. That's all you want. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Okay, we do this after every really bad shooting performance, and maybe we shouldn't. Maybe this stat doesn't tell us everything we need to know, but I do think it's worth noting because so much of Saturday's game felt like the Magic missing shots. And I know that's not the excuse or not the analysis y'all want to hear. You want more detail. You want to say, okay, this is why, all this stuff. We know the Magic aren't a good shooting team. But Orlando went 10 for 35 from three. And once again, we turn to NBA.com shot data, and it tells us the Magic missed a lot of open shots. The Magic were 5 for 20 overall and 4 for 19 from three on shots where the closest defender was 6 or more feet away. They were 6 for 14 on three-pointers when the closest defender was 4 to 6 feet away. That again means they were 10 for 33. That's all 10 of their makes and 33 of their 35 attempts when the closest defender was 4 or more feet away when they shot it. Now, I'm not sure how accurate any of these stats are, whether even a 4 to 6 foot shot, for a shot with a defender close 4 to 6 feet away is a good shot. And then, maybe sometimes NBA.com doesn't measure correctly because Franz made a three where De'Aaron Fox really closed out hard on him. But the bottom line is this. If you watch the tape, if you break down the numbers, the Magic missed a lot of shots where they were open, where they, at least theoretically, have a good chance to make the shot. And that is something we have to think about. At the end of the day, so many of these games, and Saturday was certainly this case, so many of these games are about making or missing shots. And look, we know the Magic aren't a good three-point shooting team. They've worked really hard to find ways to make up that gap, whether it's free throws, whether it's turnovers, whether it's offensive rebounds. The Magic have become a low-volume three-point shooting team, and they found a way to make it work. They're not a top offense by any stretch, but they are better. And they're starting to hit their threes a little more regularly. Saturday was a game where they missed threes, and that happens with them. But it came down, but the end of the game came down to they missed two wide open threes. Cole Anthony was wide open on his first three-point attempt. When Jonathan Isaac got that rebound, the defense collapsed around him. He did exactly what you're supposed to do. Kick out to the open shooters with the defense trying to get rebounds. Franz Wagner missed a straight-on three. You have to live with those misses because they are quality shots. But yes, you can't live with those misses because we're in the results business now. And the regular season, you can live with it because stuff happens in the regular season. You got 82 games. In a playoff series, the difference between a 2-1 series lead and a 2-1 series deficit is that shot. The difference between a 2-2 series and a 3-1 series is that shot. You got to be able to make shots. And unfortunately, Saturday's game was another reminder that, yes, the Magic have a shooting problem. That's not rocket science. I'm not breaking any news here. Their shooting percentages, even on these quote-unquote open shots, is not good. Even the wide open shots is not good. The Magic have to be better. I'm not sitting here pretending otherwise or saying otherwise. The Magic have to make shots. It's not rocket science. I'm not wearing my make shots shirt today for Northwestern, but they got to make shots. Plain and simple. It's not rocket science. They have to make shots if they want to get where they want to go, to be the team that they want to be. But here's the thing. Here's the other thing then. You got to live sometimes with missing good looks. It happens. And that's why, as forlorn and as frustrated I think the Magic were after the game, they're more frustrated with themselves for missing good looks. They know they played well enough to win the game. And that's why I don't think Saturday's loss is a reason to panic or a reason to not believe. Like, they weren't going to sweep the rest of the games. Like, they're going to lose a game here or there. And as I said yesterday, go back and listen to that episode if you haven't done so already. How the Magic respond matters so much more now. We know they will miss open threes. What's important is that they get those open threes, that they stick to the process to get those open threes. We know that that's going to cost them and that that's a need that they have to address in the summer. None of us are hiding from that. But with this team, keep getting those open looks, keep having faith that they'll drop. That's the key to success. That worked Thursday against New Orleans. It didn't work Saturday against Sacramento. And that may be the difference for the Magic as they get closer and closer to the playoffs. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the Philly podcasts to your podcast enable listening device. For latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And of course, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub for more Orlando Magic content. And as always, thank you for your support. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. As always, thank you to Boo Booey, go Cats, and UConn is really, really good. Until next time, we'll see you again for another. This has been Philip Rossreich of Locked On Magic and Orlando Magic Daily. We'll see you all again for another episode of Locked On Magic.